Montana Territory, 1872. The unforgiving sun beat down on the weathered porch of Nathan Becker's small ranch house, casting long shadows across the dusty yard. At 25, Nathan had already carved out his own piece of the frontier, 40 acres of decent grazing land, a small herd of cattle, and a sturdy two-room cabin he'd built with his own hands. But as he scanned the empty horizon for the stagecoach that was already 3 hours late, he couldn't shake the hollow feeling in his chest. No one in their right mind would choose this life, he muttered to himself, adjusting his hat against the glare. A man survives out here alone because that's what the West demands. Nathan had repeated this conviction so many times it had hardened into truth. After watching his father waste away from grief when his mother died of fever, Nathan had sworn he would never make himself that vulnerable. The frontier was no place for tender feelings. It required grit, independence, and the wisdom to know that attachments were dangerous liabilities. Yet here he was, waiting for a woman he'd never met. The advertisement had been straightforward enough. Practical, hard-working Eastern woman seeks dependable Western man for marriage of mutual convenience and respect. Their exchange of letters had been equally practical. Discussions of ranch management, household economics, and clear expectations. No romantic nonsense, just sensible partnership. That's all he wanted. All he could afford to want. His neighbor, old Jim Haskins, had laughed when Nathan shared his plans. "You're ordering a bride like you'd order a plow, boy," he'd said, shaking his grizzled head. "Might find yourself with more than you bargained for." But Nathan wasn't looking for love, just help with the endless work and someone to cook a decent meal. The solitude of ranch life was getting to him, though he'd never admit it aloud. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings after the work was done, the silence of the cabin pressed in until he found himself talking to his horse just to hear a voice. He checked his pocket watch again. The stage was now nearly 4 hours late. Something wasn't right. Nathan sighed, deciding to ride into town to investigate. He had just turned toward the stable when a movement on the horizon caught his eye, not the expected stagecoach, but a single rider, moving fast. As the rider approached, Nathan realized with surprise that it was a woman, riding astride in a manner that spoke of confidence and urgency. Her dark green traveling dress was hiked scandalously high, revealing dusty boots and stockings. She pulled up short at his fence line, her chestnut mare blowing hard. "Are you Nathan Becker?" she called, pushing back a wayward strand of golden blonde hair from her flushed face. "I am," he replied cautiously, taking in the unexpected sight. She was younger than he'd expected, perhaps 22 at most, with striking blue eyes that assessed him frankly. "Sophia Thompson," she introduced herself breathlessly. "The stagecoach was robbed 15 miles back. The driver's been shot, passengers stranded. I borrowed this horse from the relay station to reach the nearest ranch, which appears to be yours." Nathan felt his carefully ordered world tilt. This wasn't how things were supposed to happen. "My mail-order bride was on that stage," he said, his mind struggling to process the situation. The woman, Sophia, swung down from her horse with graceful efficiency. "Eliza Miller? Red hair, traveling with a large trunk." "Yes," Nathan confirmed, his pulse quickening. "Is she hurt?" Sophia's expression softened with sympathy. "No, but she's no longer available for marriage." When the bandits came, the stage driver's assistant, young man named Thomas, took a bullet protecting her. It was rather gallant. By the time I left to find help, she was promising to nurse him back to health and refusing to continue to Montana. She paused. "I believe there was mention of love at first sight." Nathan stared at her, his plans crumbling around him. "Love at first sight," he repeated flatly. "During a robbery. The frontier creates strange circumstances," Sophia replied, her lips quirking into a small smile. "Now, do you have a fresh horse? There are injured people who need help." Nathan studied her for a long moment, taking in the determination in her stance, the intelligence in her eyes, and the complete absence of fear despite the dangerous situation. "Who exactly are you, Miss Thompson? You don't seem like the usual Eastern traveler." "I'm a journalist," she answered, straightening her shoulders. "I'm writing about women's experiences in the Western Territories for the New York Herald. I was interviewing your Miss Miller for my series when our stagecoach was attacked." She held his gaze. "Now, that fresh horse." In that moment, something shifted in Nathan's carefully ordered world. The events of the next hour blurred as they gathered supplies, saddled horses, and rode hard toward the stranded passengers. All the while, Nathan found himself stealing glances at this unexpected woman who had galloped into his life with such self-possession. The scene at the stagecoach was chaotic but less dire than he'd feared. The driver would survive his wounds, and the assistant, Thomas, was indeed being tenderly attended by a red-haired woman who barely spared Nathan a glance when Sophia made introductions. True to Sophia's report, Eliza Miller had apparently found her destiny in the arms of a stage driver's assistant rather than a Montana rancher. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Becker," Eliza said, not looking sorry at all as she dabbed at Thomas's forehead with a damp cloth. "But surely you understand that matters of the heart cannot be scheduled or arranged by post." Nathan found himself at a loss for words. The practical partnership he had envisioned evaporated before his eyes, yet strangely, he felt more bewildered than disappointed. "The heart wants what it wants," Sophia commented beside him, her tone so neutral that Nathan couldn't tell if she was being sincere or mocking. After the wounded were stabilized and arrangements made to transport everyone to town, Nathan found himself riding alongside Sophia in the gathering dusk. "What will you do now?" she asked as they crested a hill overlooking his property. "Without your mail-order bride?" Nathan shrugged, the familiar weight of solitude settling back onto his shoulders. "Same as I've always done. Manage on my own." Sophia studied him with those perceptive blue eyes. "Your letters to Eliza were quite specific about needing help with the ranch. She showed them to me during our interview." "The work doesn't disappear just because my arrangements fell through," he replied tersely. "No," she agreed. "It doesn't." She was quiet for a moment before continuing. "I need somewhere to stay while I complete my research on frontier women. The boarding house in town was full when I inquired last week." Nathan nearly pulled his horse to a stop. "Are you proposing something, Miss Thompson?" "A practical arrangement," she replied calmly. "I need accommodations and authentic experiences of frontier life for my articles. You need help with your ranch." "I'm stronger than I look, Mr. Becker, and I learn quickly. You're a city woman. A journalist. What do you know about ranch work?" "Very little," she admitted with disarming honesty. "But I've interviewed dozens of women who have made this transition. I've taken notes on everything from churning butter to treating cattle ailments. I'm a quick study, and I'm not afraid of hard work." She paused, meeting his eyes directly. 3 months. I'll work alongside you in exchange for room, board, and the story. After that, we go our separate ways." The proposal was outlandish, improper, and entirely unexpected. Yet Nathan found himself considering it. "The cabin only has 2 rooms," he pointed out. "I'll take the smaller one," she replied promptly. "With a lock on the door, of course. People will talk." "People always talk, Mr. Becker. I'm a woman traveling alone writing stories for a newspaper. My reputation is already the subject of speculation." Her chin lifted slightly. "Unless your concern is for your own reputation?" Despite himself, Nathan felt a reluctant smile tug at his lips. "I don't think anyone would believe I could compromise a woman as formidable as you appear to be, Miss Thompson." "Then we have an arrangement?" She extended her hand like a man would, waiting for him to shake on it. Against every instinct of self-preservation, Nathan took her hand. 3 months, he agreed. Starting tomorrow. Neither of them could have predicted how those 3 months would unfold, or how they would change them both forever. Within a week, Nathan realized that Sophia Thompson was unlike any woman he had ever encountered. She rose before dawn without complaint, donned a split riding skirt she'd apparently had made specifically for her Western adventures, and attacked each task with determined intensity. She took notes on everything, peppering him with questions about cattle management, water rights, and winter preparation that made him reconsider processes he'd taken for granted. "Why do you keep the calves separated this way?" she asked on their 10th day, pencil poised above her ever-present notebook. "Because that's how my father did it," Nathan answered automatically, then frowned. "Actually, I don't rightly know. It's just how things are done." Sophia's eyebrows rose slightly. "Interesting how many frontier customs persist without examination," she murmured, making another note. That evening, Nathan found himself digging through his father's old ranching journals, searching for the reasoning behind practices he'd blindly continued. When he discovered a more efficient method in those yellowed pages, he felt strangely compelled to share it with Sophia over breakfast the next morning. Her genuine interest and subsequent questions led to the first real conversation they'd shared, one that stretched long past sunset, beside the fireplace, with coffee cups empty and forgotten between them. "You love this land," she observed softly, watching his face in the firelight. "It's not just work to you." Nathan shifted uncomfortably at having his feelings so directly named. "It's my responsibility," he corrected. "No." Sophia shook her head, golden hair gleaming in the dim light. "Responsibilities are burdens we carry. The way you speak about this ranch, it's more than duty. It's love." Nathan changed the subject quickly, but her words lingered, challenging his carefully constructed barriers. As spring edged toward summer, their initial awkwardness gave way to an efficient partnership. Sophia proved surprisingly adept at managing the household accounts, discovering savings Nathan had overlooked. She was hopeless at cooking but approached it with the same methodical determination she applied to everything, resulting in meals that improved from inedible to merely bland over the weeks. "I believe I've mastered biscuits," she announced proudly one evening, presenting him with her latest attempt. Nathan suppressed a smile as he examined the misshapen lumps. "They're certainly more consistent than yesterday's batch." "You're being charitable. They're still terrible." She sighed, but there was laughter in her eyes. "Unfortunately for you, I've learned that cooking falls under women's traditional frontier duties, so I must include my culinary journey in my article." "Heaven help your readers," Nathan replied, earning himself a swat with a kitchen towel. These moments of easy companionship became more frequent, punctuating days of hard work. Nathan found himself looking forward to evenings when Sophia would read aloud from her articles, seeking his input on technical details. Her perspective on frontier life was fresh and insightful, catching nuances he'd never considered about his own existence. 6 weeks into their arrangement, disaster struck. A violent spring storm swept through the valley, flooding the lower pastures and threatening the herd. Nathan and Sophia worked through the night, driving cattle to higher ground through blinding rain and dangerous lightning. "Take shelter," he shouted to her as the storm intensified. "This is too dangerous." But Sophia, drenched and muddy, merely shook her head and continued working alongside him. When a panicked steer charged directly toward her, Nathan's heart nearly stopped. But Sophia stood her ground and redirected the animal with a calm confidence that left him staring in disbelief. By morning, they had saved all but 3 of the herd, stumbling back to the cabin exhausted, soaked, and oddly exhilarated. "We did it," Sophia said, her voice hoarse from shouting over the storm. Her blonde hair was plastered to her head, face streaked with mud, clothes ruined beyond repair, and Nathan suddenly realized she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The thought struck him with such force that he physically stepped back. "You should change before you catch your death," he said gruffly, retreating behind the familiar wall of practicality. Later that week, Nathan overheard Sophia in conversation with Martha Wilson, the shopkeeper's wife who had written out to commission an article about frontier businesses run by women. "He believes love is a weakness out here," Sophia was explaining as they sat on the porch, unaware of Nathan approaching around the corner of the house. "That attachments make survival impossible." "And what do you think, Miss Thompson?" Martha asked curiously. There was a pause before Sophia answered. "I think the opposite may be true. From what I've observed, those who form deep connections seem better equipped to face frontier hardships. Shared burdens, shared joys. The people who truly struggle are the ones who insist on facing everything alone." Nathan froze, feeling exposed as if she had somehow read his most private thoughts. He retreated silently, her words echoing uncomfortably in his mind. That night, unable to sleep, Nathan pulled out the small wooden box where he kept his mother's letters to his father, correspondence from their courtship years that he had never been able to bring himself to read. Something about Sophia's words compelled him to finally open them. In his mother's elegant script, he found not weakness, but strength. Not vulnerability, but courage. The love his parents had shared hadn't diminished their ability to survive the frontier. It had been their reason to persevere through its harshest challenges. The discovery shook Nathan's most fundamental beliefs, leaving him restless and unsettled as June gave way to July, and their agreed-upon 3 months neared its midpoint. Everything changed on a sweltering afternoon when Nathan returned from mending fences to find an unfamiliar horse tied outside the cabin. Inside, he discovered Sophia engaged in tense conversation with a well-dressed man whose arrogant posture immediately set Nathan's teeth on edge. "Nathan," Sophia said, rising quickly. Her face was pale, her usual composure visibly shaken. "This is William Hargrove. He's an acquaintance from New York." "More than an acquaintance, darling. Don't be coy," the man corrected with a cold smile. He turned to Nathan, assessing him with undisguised disdain. "So this is your research subject? How quaint." Nathan stiffened, his hand instinctively moving to his belt where his revolver would normally be. "What brings you to Montana, Mr. Hargrove?" he asked, keeping his voice level with effort. "I've come to collect what's mine," Hargrove replied smoothly. "Sophia has had her little adventure. It's time she returned to civilization and her obligations." Sophia's eyes flashed. "I have no obligations to you, William. Our engagement was broken the moment I discovered your true character." The word engagement hit Nathan like a physical blow. He looked between them, suddenly understanding the tension that filled the room. "A momentary misunderstanding," Hargrove said dismissively. "Your father has reconsidered his position. The merger between our newspapers will proceed as planned, with our marriage securing the arrangement." He turned to Nathan with false cordiality. "Miss Thompson neglected to mention that her father owns the New York Herald, didn't she? These little writing excursions are merely an indulgence before she assumes her proper role as my wife." Nathan's gaze shifted to Sophia, whose face had gone even paler. "Is this true?" he asked quietly. "My father owns the newspaper," she confirmed, her voice tight. "But I am not property to be bartered in a business arrangement. I broke the engagement months ago when I discovered William had been having affairs with at least 3 women." Hargrove waved a dismissive hand. "Trivial concerns. In our circle, such arrangements are understood." "Not by me," Sophia said firmly. "Now please leave. You've wasted your journey." But Hargrove made no move toward the door. Instead, he withdrew a folded document from his jacket. "Your father has signed ownership of your trust fund over to me as advance consideration for the merger. You have no means to support yourself, Sophia. Your independent lifestyle has been cut off." His smile was triumphant. "You will return with me, or you will find yourself penniless." Nathan watched the shock register on Sophia's face and felt a surge of protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. "She's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go," he said, stepping forward. Hargrove laughed coldly. "And who are you to interfere, cowboy? Do you imagine she would choose this?" He gestured dismissively around the modest cabin. "Over the life she was born to? She's been slumming, playing at being a frontier woman. It's an amusement, nothing more." Nathan looked at Sophia, sudden doubt creeping in. Had he misunderstood everything? Was she merely collecting experiences for her articles, viewing him and his life as curious specimens to be observed and written about? "Nathan," Sophia began, her voice unsteady. "It's not. Oh, it's Nathan now, is it?" Hargrove interrupted mockingly. "How familiar. Tell me, Sophia, have you added seducing a cowboy to your journalistic achievements?" Nathan saw the humiliation flood Sophia's face and felt something snap inside him. In 2 strides, he crossed the room and grabbed Hargrove by his expensive lapels. "You will apologize to the lady," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "And then you will leave my property." "Take your hands off me," Hargrove hissed. "Do you know who I am? I could buy this entire valley and have you run off it with a single telegram." "Not in Montana territory, you couldn't," Nathan replied steadily. "Out here, a man's worth is measured by his character, not his bank account. And yours appears sorely lacking." He released Hargrove with a small shove toward the door. "Apologize, and then ride out while you still can." For a moment, it seemed Hargrove might escalate the confrontation. But something in Nathan's expression must have convinced him otherwise. "This isn't over," he said instead, straightening his jacket. "Sophia, you have 3 days to reconsider. After that, I'll be forced to take legal action against your father for breach of contract. You know what that would mean for him." With that thinly veiled threat hanging in the air, he departed, leaving a heavy silence behind him. Nathan turned to Sophia, whose composed facade had completely crumbled. "Is what he said true? About your father's financial situation?" She nodded, sinking into a chair. "My father overextended himself in some investments. The merger with Hargrove Publishing would save him from bankruptcy, but William made it clear the deal depends on our marriage. She looked up at Nathan, her blue eyes filled with a mixture of anger and despair. I couldn't agree to it, not after discovering his infidelities and his cruelty to those who work for him. I thought by leaving, I was forcing my father to find another solution. So you came west to escape, Nathan said slowly, pieces falling into place. Not just for your articles. The articles were genuine, Sophia insisted. But yes, I needed distance. Time to figure out a way to help my father without sacrificing myself to a loveless, faithless marriage. She laughed bitterly. Now it seems I have no choice. William has outmaneuvered me. Nathan paced the small room, struggling to process everything. Why didn't you tell me who you really were? Sophia's expression faltered. Because for the first time in my life, someone was seeing me for my capabilities, not my family name or fortune. She met his eyes directly. You expected me to fail at ranch work, Nathan, but you gave me the chance to try. Do you know how rare that is? To be judged solely on your own merits. Her words struck a chord, but Nathan wasn't ready to acknowledge it. The revelation of her hidden identity and engagement, even a broken one, had shaken him more than he cared to admit. What will you do? He asked instead. Sophia straightened her shoulders, gathering her composure. I need to think. May I have some time alone? Nathan nodded stiffly and left the cabin, his thoughts in turmoil. He spent the afternoon mechanically completing chores, his mind replaying every interaction with Sophia over the past weeks in light of these new revelations. Had it all been an act? The determined way she tackled every challenge, her insightful questions, the nights spent in conversation by the fire, was it all research for her articles? But why would an heiress work so hard, pushing herself beyond exhaustion during the flood, if it was merely for show? By evening, Nathan had reached no conclusions except one. The thought of Sophia leaving, returning east with that arrogant bastard, twisted something painful in his chest. When he returned to the cabin at dusk, he found her sitting at the table, writing rapidly in her notebook. She looked up as he entered, her expression resolute. I've made my decision, she said without preamble. I'm not returning with William. Nathan felt a surge of relief that he quickly suppressed. What about your father? I've written him a letter explaining everything. There are other potential partners for merger who won't demand his daughter as part of the bargain. She hesitated. But I will need to leave here sooner than we agreed. I must return to New York immediately to help him navigate this situation. Of course, Nathan said, ignoring the hollow feeling that opened inside him at her words. When will you go? Tomorrow, if possible, she replied. The stagecoach passes through town at noon. Nathan nodded, his face carefully neutral. I'll take you in. That night, sleep eluded him. The cabin felt different knowing Sophia would no longer be there, quieter, emptier, colder somehow. He told himself it was for the best. Their arrangement had always been temporary. She belonged to a different world, one of wealth and privilege that he could never be part of. Yet as he listened to the soft sounds of her packing in the next room, Nathan was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Somewhere along the way, despite all his defenses, Sophia Thompson had become essential to him. Morning came too quickly. They barely spoke as they loaded her trunks onto the wagon and set out for town. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken words. As they approached the outskirts of town, Sophia finally broke the silence. I want to thank you, Nathan. These months have meant more to me than I can express. Nathan kept his eyes fixed on the road. You're welcome. I hope your articles turn out well. Is that all you think this was to me? She asked softly. Material for my writing? Nathan's hands tightened on the reins. Wasn't it? No. The single word hung between them. It was the first time in my life I felt real, useful, valued for myself, not for my family name or my dowry. She paused. I learned something important here, Nathan. Something I'll carry with me always. Despite himself, he turned to look at her. What's that? That connection isn't weakness. It's the only thing that gives meaning to all the struggle. Her blue eyes met his directly. You taught me that, though you don't believe it yourself. Before Nathan could respond, a shot rang out, followed immediately by the sharp crack of a bullet splintering the wagon seat between them. Instinctively, he pulled Sophia down and yanked the horses to a halt, scanning for the source of the attack. 3 mounted men emerged from a stand of trees ahead, rifles raised. The leader was immediately recognizable. Hargrove, his city clothes exchanged for frontier attire, his face twisted with rage. "Did you think I would simply accept your refusal?" he called to Sophia. "I've invested too much to let you walk away." Nathan reached slowly for the rifle tucked beside the seat, but another warning shot stopped him. "Don't be foolish, Cowboy," Hargrove said. "My associates here are professional bounty hunters. They'll put a bullet through you without hesitation." He focused on Sophia again. "Come with me now, and I'll let your rancher live. Refuse, and I'll have him killed as a horse thief." It's remarkable how little evidence is needed for frontier justice. Sophia's face had gone white, but her voice remained steady. "You wouldn't dare." "Wouldn't I?" Hargrove's smile was chilling. "Who would question it? A wealthy New York businessman against a nobody rancher? I've already spoken with the territorial judge, a man deeply in debt, as it happens, and quite receptive to financial arrangements." Nathan assessed their situation with growing dread. They were exposed on the open road, outgunned and outnumbered. If he reached for his weapon, they would shoot him instantly, leaving Sophia unprotected. "I'll go with you," Sophia said suddenly, starting to rise. "No." Nathan pulled her back down. "You can't trust him." "I don't," she whispered. "But I can't let you die because of me." The intensity in her eyes struck him to his core. In that moment, Nathan realized with perfect clarity what he should have known for weeks. He had fallen in love with Sophia Thompson. The realization both terrified and liberated him. "Trust me," he murmured, squeezing her hand. Then he straightened slowly, raising his hands. "Hargrove, let's discuss this reasonably. No need for bloodshed." Hargrove's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "There's nothing to discuss. Sophia belongs with me." "She belongs wherever she chooses," Nathan replied evenly, carefully shifting his position to block their view of Sophia. "But I understand business concerns. Perhaps we can reach a different arrangement." While he spoke, Nathan was acutely aware of Sophia moving behind him, reaching beneath the wagon seat, where he kept a small Derringer pistol for emergencies. He continued to engage Hargrove, drawing the man's attention. "What could you possibly offer me?" Hargrove scoffed. "Information," Nathan improvised, "about valuable mining claims in the territory. Claims that could make the newspaper merger seem insignificant by comparison." Hargrove hesitated, greed warring with suspicion on his face. That moment of distraction was all they needed. Nathan dove for his rifle as Sophia raised the Derringer and fired, hitting the bounty hunter on Hargrove's left. The man cried out, dropping his weapon and clutching his shoulder. Nathan's rifle shot caught the second man in the leg, unseating him from his horse. Hargrove, realizing his advantage was lost, turned to flee, but his city riding skills were no match for the rough terrain. His horse stumbled, sending him tumbling to the ground where he lay motionless. The next few hours passed in a blur as the local sheriff arrived, statements were taken, and Hargrove and his associates were locked in the town jail. The evidence against them was damning, not only for the ambush, but also for the forged documents Hargrove had been carrying, bearing false signatures from Sophia's father. "We'll need you both to stay in town until the circuit judge arrives next week," the sheriff informed them. "But I don't anticipate any complications. Attempted murder's pretty straightforward, even out here." As they sat on a bench outside the sheriff's office, the aftermath of danger leaving them both shaken and oddly euphoric, Sophia turned to Nathan. "I need to send a telegram to my father immediately. He needs to know what William attempted." Nathan nodded. "Of course." He hesitated, then added, "I suppose once the judge clears everything, you'll be heading back east." Sophia studied him for a long moment. "Is that what you want?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. "What I want doesn't signify," he answered carefully. "You have responsibilities, a life back there." "I do have responsibilities," she agreed, "but perhaps not the ones you imagine." She took a deep breath. "I've been considering establishing a Western office for the Herald. Frontier stories told from a frontier perspective, not filtered through Eastern preconceptions." Nathan's heart began to beat faster. "Here? In Montana? The territory is growing rapidly. It needs truthful reporting, particularly regarding Indian affairs, land use policies, women's experiences." She met his eyes directly. "I would need a home base. Somewhere central, with someone knowledgeable about local conditions." "Someone like a rancher," he said slowly. "A particular rancher," she corrected, a smile beginning to form. one who's proven remarkably tolerant of a city woman's questions and terrible cooking. Hope unfurled in Nathan's chest, fragile and terrifying. It wouldn't be an easy life, he warned. Not compared to New York. New York was never easy for me, Sophia replied softly. Just familiar. There's a difference. She reached for his hand. Besides, I seem to recall someone saying I'm a quick study. Nathan looked down at their joined hands, then back at her face, determined, intelligent, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with conventional prettiness and everything to do with courage and character. Sophia, he began, I'm not good at pretty words. I never believed in. He stopped, struggling to express feelings he'd denied for so long. In love, she supplied gently. In connection, he corrected. In needing someone. My whole life, I've believed that standing alone was the only safe way to survive out here. And now I know that's backward, he admitted, the truth finally breaking free. We survive because of each other, not in spite of each other. He tightened his grip on her hand. I don't want you to stay because you need a base for your newspaper. I want you to stay because I love you. The words, once spoken, hung in the air between them, terrifying in their vulnerability, exhilarating in their truth. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Well, Mr. Becker, it seems we have a practical problem. What's that? He asked, suddenly uncertain. I've fallen in love with you too, she said simply. Which makes returning east impossible, and staying here is merely a business arrangement equally impossible. She leaned closer. I believe there's only one practical solution. Nathan's heart was thundering in his chest. And what would that be, Miss Thompson? Marriage, she replied, her smile widening. Of mutual convenience, respect, and love. In answer, Nathan pulled her into his arms and kissed her, right there on the main street of town, in full view of anyone who cared to look. For a man who had spent his life avoiding vulnerability, it was the bravest thing he had ever done. 1 year later, Nathan stood on the porch of a much-expanded ranch house, watching as Sophia directed the installation of the Herald's new printing press in the converted barn. Her Western office had quickly become the territory's most respected news source, with correspondents in 3 states reporting to her. The main house had grown too, with a proper office for Sophia's writing and a nursery awaiting the child that would arrive in spring. Inside, a framed copy of her first major article hung in a place of honor. Frontier Partnerships: How Love Conquers the West's Harshest Challenges. Nathan smiled, remembering how he'd once believed that love had no place on the frontier, that connections were weaknesses rather than strengths. Sophia had proven him wrong in every possible way. As if sensing his thoughts, she looked up and waved, her golden hair catching the autumn sunlight. She excused herself from the workmen and crossed the yard to join him, her steps slightly slower with her advancing pregnancy. The press should be operational by week's end, she reported, leaning into him as his arms circled her waist. Just in time to report on the Harvest Festival. Your father's letter arrived, Nathan told her. He says the Herald's Western edition is outselling expectations. He's very proud. Sophia smiled. He also mentioned he's thinking of visiting in the spring. He wants to meet his grandchild. Nathan nodded, still amazed at how completely his life had transformed. Where once he had faced each day alone, now he was surrounded by connection, not just with Sophia, but with the growing community their partnership had helped foster. The ranch hosted regular gatherings for neighboring families, and Sophia's articles had attracted new settlers who valued her honest portrayal of frontier challenges and rewards. Any regrets? He asked, a question he still posed occasionally, wanting to be certain she was truly content with their life together. Sophia turned in his arms to face him. Only that I wasted so many years believing I had to choose between my work and my heart. She placed his hand over her rounded belly where their child grew. Instead, I found a man who helps me honor both. Nathan bent to kiss her, marveling at how the lonely, guarded rancher he had been could have become this man, a husband, soon-to-be father, and partner in all things. The frontier remained challenging, unpredictable, and sometimes dangerous. But he no longer faced it alone, and that made all the difference. I ordered a bride, he murmured against her lips, but found a woman who changed everything instead. Sophia laughed, the sound still his favorite in the world. Sometimes the West sends exactly what we need, she replied, rather than what we think we want. As the setting sun bathed their homestead in golden light, Nathan knew with absolute certainty that the true strength of the frontier lay not in solitary endurance, but in the bonds between people brave enough to love despite life's uncertainties. It was a lesson worth the learning, and one he would pass on to their children. The legacy of a mail-order bride who never arrived, and the woman who did, changing this cowboy forever.